Today I'm going to show you how I make this super simple sourdough bread. If I can learn how to make sourdough bread, you can too, because it really is easy once you understand the process. And if you're new here, my name is Allison and we are the Adams family. We're pretty much about food around here. We do a lot of home cooking. I do a lot of different recipes and things like that. So if you like that kind of thing, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. But for now, let's just get on into how I make my sourdough bread. To get started, all you are going to need is a sourdough starter, unbleached all-purpose flour, water, and salt. It is really important that you're using unbleached flour when you're making sourdough bread. The bleached flour does not react well with the wild yeast in your sourdough. And if you don't have a sourdough starter, there's a lot of different methods on how you can get one. You can ask a friend that is already making sourdough bread. You can look on Facebook Marketplace and see if anyone's selling them. I see them for sale all the time. Or you can make your own from scratch. If you would like for me to make a video about how to make one from scratch in a really easy way, let me know. I would be happy to make a video for you. When I first started making sourdough, I just found it was really overwhelming. There was so much information out there, but now that I know how to do it, it's actually really simple and a lot of people overcomplicate it. But let's go ahead and just get into how I'm actually gonna make this bread because that's what we're here for. I start with 500 grams of water and 100 grams of sourdough starter that has been fed and has doubled in size. I know my starter is ready by the texture. It gets airy and almost cloud-like. Then I give it a good mix and I add 750 grams of flour and 14 grams of salt. You're going to mix it together until it forms a shaggy dough. If you don't have a dough whisk, I highly recommend it, but they aren't necessary. You don't really need it. It just makes it easier. After you have your shaggy dough mix, you're going to let it rest for 30 minutes. And after you've let it rest, you're going to start your stretch and folds. You're going to do 3 sets of 3 stretch and folds every 30 minutes. This is how you develop the gluten and strengthen your dough. You will take your dough and you're going to stretch it up and then fold it over, and then you're going to turn your bowl and repeat the process. Once you have completed your 3 sets of 3, you will cover it. I use the lid that came with my Pyrex bowl, but you can use plastic wrap or beeswax wrap. You just don't want to use a dry kitchen towel because the dough will dry out on top. Once you have it covered, you will let it sit on your counter overnight or for 8 to 10 hours until it's doubled in size. It's the next morning and now we are going to start shaping our dough. You're first going to flour your workspace before dumping the dough out on your workspace. And then you're going to want to laminate the dough. That's just kind of like stretching it out into a rectangle shape. And then you're just going to roll it up into a nice loose ball. And now it's time to shape. When you shape your dough, I find it easiest to put both hands on the side, and then you're going to rotate one side, pushing it forward and then pulling it back, tucking it underneath. Shaping your dough takes some practice, but once you get the technique down, it's pretty easy. Your goal in shaping is to create tension in the dough as you create that ball form. So just remember, you're pushing forward, then you're bringing it backwards, tucking it underneath. The more you do this, the easier it's going to be to know when your dough is ready. It probably takes me about 5 rotations to get the tension that I'm looking for in the dough, but at first it took me a lot more because I just didn't know what I was doing. At this point, you can place your dough in a banneton or use a bowl with a linen towel. If you don't have time to bake or you want more of the fermentation benefits, this is called bulk fermentation. But today I'm going to show you the process if you want to bake your bread shortly after you shape your dough. Once I finish shaping the bread, I put my dough directly in the Dutch oven. Just a little trick is I put rice in the bottom of my Dutch oven before I put my parchment paper on top. That helps to keep the bottom from burning. And then once I have my dough in my Dutch oven, I let it do a second rise for about an hour. After you let it do its second rise, you can preheat your oven to 450 degrees, and then when the oven is ready, you can score your dough. Just a note though, if you are wanting to make really beautiful scores, the bulk fermentation method is the best because this method doesn't score really well, but it still makes really delicious bread. Once you put your bread in the oven, you will bake for 45 minutes with the lid on, and then remove the lid and bake for another 20 minutes. Now you can keep it in a little bit longer if you want it more golden brown. The more you bake sourdough, the more you can adjust based on your own preferences of the outer crust. You want the center of your bread to be 205 degrees. So if you're unsure if it's done, don't be afraid to use a food thermometer, especially at the beginning, because it just kind of helps you get the feel of what your bread should look like. Once the crust is the color of your liking, you're going to remove it from the oven and take your bread out of the Dutch oven and place it on a cooling rack and let it cool completely before slicing. I know it's tempting to cut it when it's hot, but it is still baking and it could cause your loaf to be gummy, and we don't want that. We worked too hard, it took too long to waste our bread. Well, there you have it. That is how I make my super simple sourdough loaf. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below. I would be more than happy to help you throughout your own sourdough journey. When I first started making sourdough, I found it to be a little bit overwhelming. I made a lot of mistakes, but once I figured it out, I realized how really easy this process really is. And now the only bread that I have in my home is sourdough. But that's all I have for you today. Hopefully you liked this video. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.